So, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Okay.
So first of all, thank you everyone for coming. As Jamie set up, we are here to talk today about a partnership between Gatorade, Added Value, and Zappy Store to really understand a couple of key questions. And I may have just turned this off.
It's a green button.
Oh, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple key questions. The first question that we wanted to ask ourselves as part of this study is reaffirm that our targeting competitive athletes, so targeting this very niche audience, halos to a broader general market. We get a lot of questions from different parts of the PepsiCo organization that says, you know, if Gatorade works well for competitive athletes, doesn't it also work well for people with hangovers, for people presenting on stage? Can't we advertise to all of these different people? So one of our questions was to really prove that by targeting this small audience, we're able to reach much broader than just that. And then the second question is around a specific campaign that we launched. It's for our Frost product subline that if you've been watching the NBA finals, you've probably seen the ad about 30 or 40 times, but to understand how that campaign specifically has changed perceptions among consumers and really driven our business. So with that, I'll hand it off to Jeff to talk through some of the details.
Okay, so at the core, I'm going to talk about the product that was used, what we call Snapshot. But before I get into that and talk a little bit more about the components of Snapshot and why we think it's such an important tool, I just want to talk a little bit about, real quickly, and touch on a bit of our philosophy. I'm sure a lot of you would agree that, you know, we really believe that iconic brands, to be a really truly iconic brand, you target the few, you sell to the many, you satisfy an important and endearing need, you deliver a great experience, have a magnetic identity, and stand out with a distinct personality. And another key component that we believe in is mining culture for new ideas to inspire desire, and obviously do this year after year after year. So that philosophy forms the basis of the work that we do, the strategic marketing and branding work that we do with our clients, many of which are iconic brands. But we recognize that not all clients have the budget or the time to do large-scale projects to dig into all those different aspects. So we developed Snapshot, which is a brand insight solution that provides quick-fire inspiration to big brand questions for marketers and agencies. It provides a holistic, strategic view of a brand. It's available quick and affordably. One of the nice things, the results are available in hours, not weeks. A project might typically take. It's also feature-focused in the sense that it includes one of our key measures, which we call Vibe, which helps us understand how well a brand is resonating with culture, and that is also a predictor of future success of a brand. It's available on Zappy Store. That's a key aspect of it. And then another point I'd make is that there are additional follow-on modules that are available from Added Value that allow you to dig deeper into the insights and activate findings after you've used Snapshot. So what are the details of Snapshot? There's three core aspects which provide a holistic strategic view of a brand, leveraging three of our core tools that we use with clients. Cultural traction, which provides a measure of how well a brand is resonating and leveraging culture with consumers. Brand equity, typical measures around brand credit and preference. And then Character Lab, which helps us understand a brand's persona and character and how strong that is with consumers. All right, so a little bit more about each one of these. So we asked our cultural insights team, you know, how can we determine how well a brand is resonating and leveraging culture? How do we know if a brand is leading or lagging in culture? You know, we know that brands have a positioning and have a point in the market, but this needs to change over time as culture changes. So to stay relevant, we wanted to come up with a measure to understand that, and that's our cultural traction using what we call a Vibe score. Brands with a strong Vibe score are doing well in terms of connecting with and resonating with culture. Those brands are visionary, inspiring, bold, and exciting. The next measure that's part of the Snapshot tool is brand equity. We measure brand equity through our iceberg model. which includes brand presence, so an understanding of what's the share of mind a brand has, how strong is this share of mind with consumers, and also brand credit. How well is the brand connecting with consumers emotionally? What's the trust, loyalty, and admiration that the brands have the consumers have for the brand? And ultimately, this helps us understand the preference they have for the brand. And then the final piece is our character lab. This is based on archetypes from Jungian philosophy, if you're familiar with that. In today's environment, it's the highly competitive nature of marketing. Brands cannot just get away with trying to differentiate on product attributes. So having a strong brand character, which is a component of brand positioning, is a core aspect that we believe is important to a brand. And so Character Lab allows us to measure what that brand character is in the market, the strength of that, and what the nature of it is. And that's it. I'll turn it back over to these guys to tell us more about the actual study.
Ooh, I don't want to go forward. All right, cool. So we were sitting down thinking about the right way to structure this. And we tried a new thing, a few things with the tool specifically. Could we do a pre-post on an inspiration level, see if the needle moved? And while there was a big ad campaign running in the background, there was also a huge cultural event, which is the NBA Finals. And if Stefan and my team's here, that I bet on the Cavs last night, I still haven't got my winnings from you. But what we wanted to do is look at the core target that Gatorade has, look at people who are watching the NBA, and then just general rep consumers. And so to do that, what we do is we work closely, so on the Zappy Store side, we work really closely with Laurel to understand that segmentation. We build it into our environment so that when we need to actually access the segmentation, we pull sample directly in from consumers, we run it through the typing tool, and we can get access to it very quickly. And so we started with the pre-wave before the playoffs started, and we finished the wave really to get ready for this conference on the 23rd. And we kind of looked at the pre-post across each of these sample groups in a monadic design. So Laurel's going to quickly talk through why we chose the brands that we chose, and then also we're going to start talking about the results.
Yep, so obviously Gatorade to get a read on our own brand, and Powerade makes a lot of sense. It's really a dual category. Red Bull seems like a little bit of an outlier, but one of the teams that we expected to be in the finals was the Golden State Warriors. They actually have the sidelines presence Red Bull does, for the regular season. Gatorade owns the playoffs, but knowing that they at least have had that constant conversation throughout the entire NBA year, we wanted to get a read on how that actually impacted things. So with that, going into some of the results of our two key questions. So what you'll see is we did prove out the target the few, reach the many strategy that we've had. So the first look here is among competitive athletes. How do these three brands resonate in their cultural traction across the 4 different vibe scores? And we'll dig into really what's driving this category. But as you can see, among competitive athletes, as well as among general market, Gatorade performs very well. So compared to our key competitors, on our core target and on the broader target, we outpace our two competitors. Interestingly, we do have a bit more of a halo with the general market than some of our competition. And then looking into the individual scores, so clearly what drives this category among competitive athletes is inspiration and excitement, which makes a lot of sense. We're aligned with sports, which are both inspiring and very exciting. And so what you'll see, again, the same sort of story plays out here among competitive athletes. Gatorade outperforms our competitors. And then what you'll see among the general market is a slightly different story, but again, we're really positive across all of the key metrics among the general market, although it switches a bit from inspiration and excitement to being inspiring and bold. So then looking at some of our general brand health metrics, what we see here is, again, the same thing plays out. So among competitive athletes, we have the strongest brand presence, we have the strongest brand credit among both competitive athletes as well as general market. So this is just one more point for us to kind of sell in our strategy, both internally and to some of our retail partners as well. So then digging into the second question, this is really about the Frost campaign and how it has aligned with the NBA Finals. This is something that we do a lot of ad testing. We do a lot with Zappy Store specifically. But the unique thing about this campaign is how much we really lined this up with the actual finals. we do a lot of studies to understand how our perceptions are on, is a brand used by professional athletes on the sidelines, but we don't really get a sense of how that translates to cultural conversation while a specific event is going on. So with that, honestly, we pulled the data, as Ryan mentioned, a little bit early to be able to have a study for this conference. If we were doing this outside of this environment, I think we probably would have waited a couple weeks until the Cavs win the finals. I'm from Ohio. I realize it's an uphill battle, but I've got to put it out there in the universe. We all got to root for
Cleveland, everybody.
Cleveland needs a win. But what we did see is directionally we saw some trends that are very positive. So among competitive athletes, our total vibe score moved in a positive direction, among general market as well. Specifically within the general market, we saw among men specifically, the pre to post vibe score increased significantly. And then across some of the key metrics, we saw that people remembered our ads more, there's stronger appeal, and there's more intense recollection of our ads as well. So it wasn't necessarily significant, some of the results that we saw, but we're starting to see trends in a positive direction. And I think if we were to do this again in a week, right after the series wraps up, then we'll see even more positive results. So then finally, the other thing that we did was the character lab. So across the board, you'll see both in the pre and the post, Gatorade performed very well in being an explorer, being a hero. These are brands that people aspire to associate themselves with. The one thing that kind of flipped, and I think it makes sense, is on this third metric here, nurture. When we started this study in the pre-period, we had just wrapped up a campaign that talked about how we were a leader in sports fuel, science, a lot of trusted, backed by science type metrics in that campaign. Since then, we've switched more to product-focused campaigns that are really about our core athlete and really talk about the benefits of our different products. So I think it makes sense that this went down and hero kind of went up, but it would be interesting to pulse this across the year to really understand, depending on what we have in market, how does this really change? And then Ryan will talk about how we were able to automate all of this and really get a quick read on all of these things.
Thanks. So we talk a lot about at these conferences about this DIY movement. As you probably gathered from this presentation, this wasn't a DIY project. We were taking a methodology that added value, really carefully crafted to answer core questions, to really address a business need. So DIY is great for business questions. What we're trying to do with automation is enable thinking, best-in-class methodologies to be accessible at scale. So working closely with companies like Added Value really enables that to happen so that the agency world can spend time consulting, spending their time and fees on helping Gatorade make better decisions. Gatorade isn't waiting or paying for results to be collected. So this is just a bit of a value curve of it's super important, as Alan talked about in his talk, to really get the experimental design right. It's also super important to know what to do with it. I think we've fallen victim to a lot of assembly lines from a business model perspective that have slowed us down, and for those corporate researchers in the room, have impacted your budgets on areas that may or may not produce value for those specific projects. So again, what we're really trying to do is bring the best thinking in the world to the research community and help really the category get out there and do more research and stop talking about commissioning research, just kind of doing it. So with that, we've got a few minutes for questions, comments, anything else. And if anybody wants to make fun of the Cavs, please don't.
Go Warriors.
Got a question?
From California.
For the Jungian personas, how are you measuring that? Are you have a series of attributes for each archetype and then play the commercial and then
So actually,
check them off, or how does that go?
The way that it works is Character Lab is a specific tool that we developed that actually uses pictures and descriptions. And the way that it's executed within this, we have a long version, we have a short version, but the way that it's added into Snapshot, it's really just the picture with the description, and then people sort based on which ones fit the brand and which don't. And then they get to a smaller pile, and then they sort those again to get to the ones that are the first, second, and third in terms of what they fits the brand overall.
Yeah. Two.
The fact that it is automated change your work process and your ability to take action on results?
Yeah, so from a Gatorade perspective, and we've talked about this a lot over the last couple days, is we're able to wait longer to actually do this study, wait until the very end of the campaign or the finals or whatever it may be to get the results, and then we can feel confident that it's complete across the entire campaign. So we can wait longer and get results sooner. So it's able to give us more real-time feedback. So the results of this may impact what we do this fall with the NFL. So that's sort of a unique use case, but we're able to use the results of this because we're able to get them so quickly on our next subsequent campaign.
Well, and I think another thing that's nice is that you can, because it's a lower cost option than a full study, you know, when you have those smaller questions that you're just wondering about, where you would typically not elevate to the commission a larger project, it allows you to go in and do
Absolutely.
quick reads of things, whether it's where your brand is now or a campaign. So it has a nice flexibility that way. The other thing I was just going to say about the way that Laurel used it was pretty interesting, because a lot of times with the tool can just be a one-time. You know, what is my brand? How is it today? Okay, great, now I know. But actually, Laurel was able to use it to actually see how it impacted with a campaign out there. So you don't always have to do pre-post, but it certainly has that flexibility that you can do that as well.
Another question?
I think you kind of just answered my question, but it was going to be how often would you do a snapshot? Like how often would you expect to see things change?
Well, I mean, in general, you would do it like you might measure any type of equity or brand positioning. You know, when you've done a big campaign or something's changed in the marketplace, maybe a competitor has done something different. So if you feel like there's been changes in the market that you really want to understand, or what you would do it as a brand, you want to understand that impact, that would certainly be times to do it. But like we were saying, because it's of the lower price and the ease and the automation, you could do that more often if you want. But yeah, there's certainly flexibility in that as well.
Yeah, it's definitely something that, whereas before we get more frequently than an annual read, but we get more of a quarterly routinized read on our brand health and some of the other metrics. This, we're able to actually link to a specific campaign and understand how our cultural traction is really changing depending on that very specific time period.
What did you learn about other competitive brands?
So one thing that I thought was really interesting, and we didn't include it here, but we did the character lab for all three of the brands. And for ours, we had really strong scores on Hero and Explorer. For Red Bull, and this isn't super surprising, but the level to which we saw this was a bit surprising. On Outlaw, their index was something in the 600s, which when we were going through the results, it was just crazy and definitely not in the norm. I think it makes a lot of sense, but it's good for us to know that if we want to go into that edgy territory with our brand, we have a clear competitor there that we need to consider that's not necessarily top of mind when we're thinking about our athletes and our products.
Any other questions? Well, I have one more then. So are there any other good use cases for this type of technology or research?
One of the cool examples that I've seen is we were working with a big consumer packaged goods company, and they were looking at a few different acquisitions. So they were able to fuel that investment decision by seeing how relevant are these brands, not just doing monetic concept tests, and that helped them inform decisions on what to acquire. We've also seen people just use it to get competitive reads. And other applications you might have seen, but those are two of the cool ones that come to my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we actually have the M&A. We've had a client use that for that. But I think the other thing that's nice is obviously huge companies like Pepsi can use it, but it also brings in a lot of other companies that may not have budgets for bigger studies, have access to now some research tools. Because again, it's a great read, good tools to understand your brand, automation on the back end to get the reporting. So it provides a lot of access for people in situations that maybe didn't have it before.
Any other questions for Laurel, Jeff, and Ryan? One more up here.
What would a typical study like this?
Yeah, so obviously.
The question was, how much would a typical study like this run?
Yeah, so let's just say we're talking to general consumers. You could be evaluating 3 brands for under $10,000 and get a report back. The more complicated you make the sample, then that changes, but it's generally the way to think of it.
That would be a sample size of.
Yeah, we typically do 100 per brand. That could be toggled up. We wouldn't toggle it down. And one of the things we do with added value and other partners is before we let the machine take over, we do a lot of manual validation to make sure that the machine produces the same analytical outputs as the stats person. So at that time, we decide minimum sample sizes and that type of thing. So different tools vary, but 100 on this tool will be the base. Cool. Any other Great question. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.